Pilot Boys in the building. Welcome to the Pilot Boys podcast, where you'll get the real on all things sports, music, and pop culture. I am Mecca Don here with my co-host V.
What's up, Pilot Boys and girls?
Today is December 26, 2019. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. On today's show, we will do a bit of a year in review. This is our last show of 2019. And we want to shed some light on certain pop culture stories and give our input on them. Also, this Saturday is the College Football Playoff. It starts, and we're going to do a preview and score predictions with our resident college football insider, Zach Smith.
Guess who we're predicting to win?
Let's get to it.
Where the Pilot Boys at?
Pilot Boys, we get on up. We gon' fly, boys, we getting up. So high. Pilot Boys, we get on up. We gon' fly, boys, we get.
Welcome back to the Pilot Boys podcast. Again, this is our last show of 2019, V.
Crazy. This year flew by, man.
This year did fly by. And, before we get into it a little bit, we obviously have to shout out our listeners, our Patreon subscribers,
Yes,
everyone who's
definitely.
liked and commented, giving us your feedback. You guys have been amazing. You know, V and I, we told you the first show that we kind of started this. We've been talking about it for a while, but we never really got around to it. A lot of logistical things. And then finally, we were like, fuck it. We're going to start it, and we're going to see what happens. You know, we didn't have everything set up. We didn't know everything about how to do a podcast and all that type of stuff. But your guys' feedback and your guys' encouragement has been amazing. So thank you. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Holidays to you all. And so thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on social media, at Twitter, at Pilot Boys Pod, and on Facebook, at Pilot Boys Podcast. And same thing with Instagram.
You are appreciated.
Yes. So, Tupac voice. You are appreciated. So, let's jump into it though, V, because 2019 was a crazy year, right? From so many different perspectives.
So much shit happening, and with social media, you hear about everything.
Yeah, social media has amplified kind of a lot of stories. There's obvious stories about, who won, the championship games and who won the World Series and who those are things that happen every year. But then you also have some other stories that, that happen that aren't necessarily things that you hear about every year. One of the things I wanted to touch on is the NCAA image and likeness thing, right? That's
Yes.
a big story. For people who don't know, the NCAA is the governing body of collegiate athletics. And, for years, for decades, they've essentially, banned and forbidden players from benefiting from their likeness and image. They were not allowed to actually reap the benefits of that while they're, currently in college. And, there have been many fights to that. NCAA football, for example, and some of those NCAA games were actually taken away because Ed O'Bannon, for example, fought the NCAA before about that.
Shout out Ed O'Bannon.
Yeah. But there's been a lot of pushback recently, and the noise is getting louder and louder and louder about when people see how much money is being ushered into college football, from sponsorships to TV revenue to ticket sales, and they see that players not only are they not allowed to share in that revenue, but they're also not allowed to make money off their own likeness. So now the Board of Governors for the NCAA started a process to enhance the name, image, and likeness opportunities. Basically, each division has to kind of come up with a proposal by 2021. Takes into account a few different things. I'll list some of them. I'm actually on the NCAA website right now. One of them is to assure student athletes are treated similarly to non-athlete students, unless there's a compelling reason that exists to differentiate, which is something that is, what that essentially means is that, people before, a lot of the quote unquote regular students on campus can work and make money off of their name and likeness, but the players and stuff like that weren't allowed to. So V, when you look at that and you see this development, obviously it's a long way to go from where you and I believe this thing should end up. But how does that impact how you think about the sport and how you think about where this thing's going to end up?
Well, I think it's great. One is that it's a step in the right direction, right?
Mhm.
The NCAA has taken so many steps in the wrong direction
Right.
that just this happening and them seeming to be okay with it and embrace it instead of trying to fight it, that's very positive.
Right.
But I think overall, the concern again comes down to one of my biggest concerns is not what's going to happen to the star players, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're Chase Young, yes, you can make money off of your image and likeness, right?
Right.
But if you are the guy who comes and plays at Ohio State and doesn't make it to the NFL, does the image and likeness thing really help you all that much?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think the second thing that I think is great about this is the video game money will at least ensure that all of the guys get something.
Right.
Right? Because if they bring back college football, college basketball games, which they should because it's a huge money maker, and the players are getting their fair portion,
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's one thing that balances it. But again, I fear the NCAA fucking this shit up. Like
Yeah.
they mess everything up and not looking at this thing and saying, okay, we passed this image and likeness thing. Anybody who knows marketing, you can't just leave an 18-year-old kid to himself to enhance and capitalize on his brand.
So that's a good point, because you're obviously a business and marketing expert and brand expert, and so to me there are multiple sides of this thing. Obviously, it's the rule itself. Now players are allowed, but now what that does is it creates an industry, right?
Yes.
So how do you think that plays out? Are there going to be marketing agents that are now able to work with players, and is there going to be what is the industry actually going to now start to look like?
The short answer is yes. Right? Like, you should be able to, if you have the opportunity to make money, and you can hire a marketing agent who, in many times, they work on a commission scale, and they're saying, oh yeah, you can't pay these guys. They'll work on a commission scale with guys that can potentially make this type of money.
And what type of commissions, percentage wise, typically, what's the range that someone can make in marketing?
Anywhere from 10 to 20%. I would advise against anyone that's taking 10% because usually they're not very good. The soft spot is 15.
Okay.
20 is if you know what you're paying for.
Right.
So there's that element. But I think that the schools should hire an internal. They hire an internal marketing staff or person. If their fear again is, all these outside marketing agencies that have illicit interests or working with agents and all that stuff,
right?
Hire an internal marketing staff to help these guys. Ohio State has done a great job of this. A couple other programs have done this to help these guys as 18-year-old kids understand what making money off of your image and likeness means, and making sure that they're not getting screwed over in their jersey sales, whatever else is coming in, that there's a system set up to make sure that these guys are protected.
Yeah.
And it's not just we passed this law, so
right. We're hands off.
We're hands
off.
off.
And I think the last thing I want to talk about with this, before we move on to some of the other topics from this year, is high school now, because that's where I see, again, this thing isn't all the way fleshed out, but that's where I could see another aspect of the industry being created. So, for example, let's say there's a guy who's like a Zion Williamson. We mentioned him before. By the time he was a sophomore in high school, he was nationally known. And now, whatever college he goes to, he's obviously going to be even a bigger star. It seems as though now this opens up people to come to him when he's a sophomore and say, hey, I'm going to be your marketing guy. I'm going to, it opens up the industry much earlier. It's not just when they get to college.
Definitely, especially in basketball, right?
Yeah.
Because we know maybe the top 2 or 3 players in the country if you really follow football, but if you follow sports, you knew who Zion Williamson was, you knew who LeBron James was. And what I think the effect here in basketball is that this one and done rule, suddenly it becomes more attractive to go to a program like Duke or Kentucky, because if you're smart, you're like, okay, instead of going to the pros right away, let me go get coached by Coach K, feed into this Duke system, create more value for myself and my family. So when I do go to the NBA, I have all these Duke fans now that are going to buy everything that I sell, right? And I think that is how the system should work. Give these kids incentive instead of creating artificial rules and saying, okay, you have to go to college for 1 year. Create a system where it's advantageous now for these guys to go to college and sell the benefits of that, because I am a proponent, as much as I'm against the NCAA in a lot of areas, I am a proponent of these kids getting an opportunity to go to college so long as they're not being taken advantage of, I think it can be an advantage for them.
Right. And that point is actually, I guess one last thing I'll say on that is that, it'll be interesting to see how this thing plays out, and we're going to watch it closely. And obviously on this show, it's going to be something that we're going to talk about a lot because we care about it. But the last point you made about college and college education is actually a perfect segue to one of our other stories that was a national story this year, which was the college admissions scandal across the country, with Aunt Becky, Lori Law.
Aunt Becky committing crimes out here.
Aunt Becky out here, hustling the system. And, this elaborate kind of scamming and planning that, these kind of rich people have been doing across the country to get their kids essentially to get into colleges that they were not otherwise qualified to get into. And when I hear about it, it drives me nuts because, I know what it took for me, and I know what it took for you, and I know what it took for my family and my parents who came here in the 70s, and your parents also immigrated here with nothing, and to make their way through college and to figure out a way to get through. And then you see all these scenarios of people kind of just hustling their way, and you're like, wait, so this person sitting next to me didn't have to go through the same shit that I had to go through to get into this school? That's some bullshit. But one thing that it does reveal is that
the truth.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, right, it seems like, we talk about capitalism a lot on this show, but there's an industry for everything, right? And when there's money involved, there's, and there's human beings involved, and there's greed involved, there are ways to figure this thing out. But when you first heard about that scandal, what were some of the thoughts that you had going through your head?
One thing, I was happy that it came out because I think it takes celebrity to make people aware of these issues. Mm-hmm. But, nepotism and favoritism and working the system, especially at these elite college institutions, like George Bush would not have gotten into jail if his dad wasn't George Bush Sr., right?
Right.
And then you just see, like, in everything, people are competitive. Mm-hmm. And you see the length. Even somebody like Aunt Becky will go to make sure that their kid gets the best, whether or not they deserve it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a bad precedent that's being set in this generation, is that do whatever you need to do to get where you need to go versus working hard, being the best that you possibly can, and going where you can go. Like, I didn't get into Harvard, right? But I was very happy to get into Ohio State, right? And I took advantage of Ohio State. Yeah. And it bothers me going through the colleges, I'm sure it does you. It's like, we worked hard for these degrees and to get scholarships and get to where we needed, that colleges would look at us favorably, to know that there's a system in place where you can just pay.
Well, the entitlement too is the thing that kind of drives me nuts. Yeah. Even Aunt Becky now, she's acting like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I'm innocent, and it's kind of like, no, you did. You know what I mean? And you took advantage of your situation and you got caught. And you're not the only person to do it. There are a lot of people that take advantage of their clout or their relationships.
A lot of people don't think about the consequences for other people. They only think about themselves too, right?
100%. And also, you get tunnel vision, and the type of things, again, I'm not making excuses, but the type of things that you'll do for your kids. We'll all do all kinds of stuff for our kids, right? And if you see an opportunity and you're like, wow, this would make for my kid's life much better, and this is the way that my friends and someone just told me about this hustle, you could see somebody falling into that. And, it's sad, though, because like I said before, for people who work hard, people who think that this is an honest, meritorious system, and you bust your ass and you're going to get into college and you're going to, it reveals kind of the underbelly of academics, which you think should be something that's untouchable, right? Which is the thing that seems to be like one of the most meritorious systems. Yeah. And then you find out that this is happening.
In many countries outside of the U.S., it is a strict meritocracy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, to get a seat is so competitive that you do have to work to be the best. I think what it's exposed, and we've seen this, is like, these are multi-billion-dollar corporations, these big universities. Harvard is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Ohio State is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So whenever you see multi-billion-dollar corporations, you're going to find corruption at all levels.
Right.
And this, it may seem like small potatoes, couple celebrity kids getting to USC, but a couple of those celebrity kids getting into USC meant two kids who really deserved to get into USC did not get into USC.
Right. And I think, the last thing on this is, I think the scary thing is, and you start to wonder, like, man, like, who runs this place? Where am I? What am I living in? What other things are happening that I don't know about, that for sure are happening, that are affecting me and my family and my positioning, and things that I think that, the things that I've been taught to think that you work hard and you do this, you'll get, and you just wonder what other things are happening. So
it's crazy.
Hopefully justice is brought there. And the reality, though, is that, this isn't going to change. A lot of once the cat is out of the bag, people they'll take their medicine, but people are going to figure out a different way to get the same result, right? Yeah. So if they have to go a different back channel, they'll do it. But money eventually is going to talk.
You can buy, when you have money, that level of money, you can buy anything, right?
Right.
People donating buildings so their kids can get into college. It's like, it's crazy. Where do we go from here?
Right. So let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about some of the sports winners in 2019. Like obviously the Patriots won the Super Bowl, Clemson won the national championship, Toronto Raptors won.
First in franchise history. That's huge. In Canada.
Who won the NCAA? It's unbelievable. Basketball.
I can't remember. I know Duke was in the final, right? But who beat them? Was it Villanova?
It's we'll get back to that.
We'll figure it out.
Obviously the Women's World Cup.
That was huge at many different levels.
Washington Nationals won.
First time winners again.
So I guess obviously shout out to all the winners, but I think the more important question is, there are winners every year, right? But when you look back at certain winners, certain victories, or the way somebody won, or just kind of their positioning, makes them remembered more than others, right? So there's certain championships that you remember, certain games that you remember. We remember Marshawn Lynch not getting the ball on the 1 yard line or whatever.
Yeah, we all remember that.
What of any of these kind of sports stories do you think, potentially has a long lasting effect? I mean, Virginia is actually who won.
Virginia won. Yes, so many first time winners this year.
Yeah,
right?
so that's the thing. So you have a lot of first time winners. You have obviously Clemson in football, who's not a first time winner anymore. You have Tom Brady winning his 6th ring. You have Kawhi Leonard establishing himself as
the best player,
the best player in the NBA. Obviously, the Golden State had injuries and stuff like that. You have the women's national soccer team winning again and just dominating. Who do you think has potentially of these winners has longevity?
Longevity?
Yeah, beyond just like this year.
Obviously the Patriots.
Right. Because that's the story that keeps on giving, right? I mean, Tom Brady, I think, does he have 6 rings now?
Is it 6?
Yeah, he has 6. Tom Brady has 6. And the thing is that,
Michael Jordan.
Yeah, and that was the kind of the thing is like, to the chase for being the GOAT, always came down to the amount of rings. When I remember when he had 4, and it was like, well, Joe Montana had 4, and he never lost in Super Bowl, and now he has 6. So maybe that is the one. Maybe that is what we look back on and say,
that's a good one. I think in terms of the most competitive, even though I'm not a baseball fan, if you are a baseball fan watching the Nationals and Astros go at it, like they did, that's what you pay to see in a 7-game series is what was in that series. Obviously, the World Cup is huge, and what they represent is incredible. But I think it's, when we were growing up, right, we all knew about the Bulls. Sorry, not the Bills.
Right, and the Bills. Boy, I love losing Super Bowl.
And they're making a documentary on it. It's just like, I'm going to flip the question to you. Who do you think in this era is like memorable? The Warriors kind of had a little run, but it seems like there's a lot more parity in sports now.
Yeah. Also, shout out to the St. Louis Blues. They won NHL. Not a big hockey fan, but I know that a lot of people are. So definitely want to shout them out.
Were they first time winners? I don't know.
I'm not sure either. I think though that this, the Kawhi thing is interesting.
I love it
because Kawhi now has multiple championships in different cities. He now, just this week, Christmas Day, they beat the Lakers. And they're looking like they could be one of the best teams now in the Clippers. And now he might win a 3rd championship. And so we might not look at the individual ring in Toronto as that meaningful, but we may look back on Kawhi's career and say, wow, Kawhi Leonard is one of the top 5 or top 7 or top 3, or who even knows? Maybe he'll get to top 1 if he continues along this trajectory.
His free agent decision single-handedly changed the landscape of the NBA, right? Because
100%.
We went through this culture of I'm just going to get with the best players and we're going to win a championship by default.
Right.
Which as a 90s, 2000s basketball fan, I did not like.
Yeah.
Kawhi, by going to the Clippers and saying no to the Lakers, because obviously if you went to the Lakers, they'd be 82-0.
Right. Nobody's beating them.
Yeah, so I think Kawhi is I think that's a great pick because of what he represents.
Yeah.
In terms of a cultural shift again in basketball.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. I think now when Kawhi went to the Clippers, you now thought there are about 6 or 7 teams who actually have a legitimate shot of winning a championship. And I think
KD too. Not KD, but him going to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I think created another beast over there.
Yeah, it did. So that's the thing. I mean, you have Brooklyn, you have, multiple teams on the East and more teams on the West, but a number of different teams that can win. So let's transition a little bit too. Before we get to our last thing I want to talk about, kind of the year in review is kind of our favorite artists, our new artists and who we enjoyed this past year, and maybe just tell people who we're looking forward to for next year. But before we get to that, obviously I want to shout out Nipsey Hussle, right?
Rest in peace, Nipsey.
Peace. John Singleton. That Nipsey thing.
Nipsey and John Singleton, I think a lot of people don't really understand what they represent because Nipsey wasn't the biggest artist in the world, and more people learned about him after he died. But what he was trying to do and build in his community is very, very admirable, and he was successful.
Yeah.
And it's you look back now and you say, why wasn't that story more publicized?
Yeah.
And why aren't stories like that more publicized where you're talking about somebody who's an artist who's also really, really giving back to their community?
Well, see, here's the interesting thing, and this is kind of where I think certain people have trouble, right? Is that, if you look at his history, for example, he was a gangbanger, right? And he acknowledges that. He went to jail. He had committed crimes and stuff like that, but he had learned from that and had started trying to move away from that life. His affiliation with the Crips was still an affiliation, but it wasn't he wasn't banging wasn't banging. It was just kind of a community type thing. And so the reason why that story hit me so hard, I mean, I was in tears, and there are a lot of celebrities and people that I know and that passed away that I'm sad about, and it's terrible. But this one hit me ultra hard because you and I are not people who learned about Nipsey later. We have been very familiar with his story. We know people who know him. We've been to the block that he lives on. We know a lot about him.
We've met him.
We've met him and interacted with him. Yeah, exactly. So it was different, and then also you just saw his energy was so consistent, and what it was that he was trying to do from developing programs in the inner city, trying to teach young kids coding. And, bringing new business ideas. He was a pioneer in a lot of ways in terms of how he ran his business and some of the entrepreneurial things that he was trying to do. And obviously trying to build up his community, and to see him get gunned down in his own community, died, it was in front of his own store.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, we talk about when Tupac died and Biggie died, people really felt it. I think this is probably the hip hop death since then, right? And these things are shocking. When John Lennon died, people tell me stories about how people could not get over it. People were committing suicide, because he had that type of impact on his fans,
right?
And I think here it's just how it.
Yeah, I mean, like Triple X, he had that impact on his fans. If you talk to my nephew, that was by far the most impactful one to him. He even more than
Juice
Nipsey,
WRLD too,
and obviously Juice, right? So. Those are really, really sad scenarios. It's unfortunate the way all of them have kind of happened. The Triple X one and the Nipsey one was much more similar because they were both gunned down, and it's sad to see that type of violence, especially for guys who have come out of tough circumstances and have tried to make a name for themselves.
I wanted to ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
As an artist, right? We talk about sometimes is his death maybe what was needed to publicize and make his story take root and more people get involved? Like, people always talk about what happens when there's a shocking death like that, right? First, it brought a lot of attention to what he's doing. And I think this is how his family views it or wants to view it.
Right.
How do you view that? Would you rather, you're an artist.
Yeah.
Would you rather, I hate to say,
yeah, I understand,
die young
yeah,
and have an impact like Tupac and like Nipsey? Or would you rather ride it out
That's a real fucking question, man. And you know what's so crazy about it is it sounds crazy to even ask that. But the reality is, if you look at like a lot of the people that we worship, right? The only one that really, well, I guess nationally, the only one that actually kind of lived a long life was like Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
But if you look at the other people that people worship, I mean, first, the 27 Club, all the people that died at 27.
Bruce Lee.
Yeah. I mean, Bruce Lee, Martin Luther King, Tupac,
Elvis, all these people.
Like, all of them died young. And so that is and some of this, honestly, and maybe this is too deep for the podcast, but it's what do you believe kind of spiritually, right? What do you believe is the purpose of living? What do you believe is the purpose on earth? And so from Nipsey's perspective, obviously no one wishes that he died. But one thing that I do realize, and you said this earlier, is that through his death, it was that a lot of people got to know who he was and what it was that he was doing, unfortunately. But that is the reality. And also, he's almost like a martyr now, And so, the longer you live, and my mom has said this to me before, is, the longer you live, the more opportunities you get to make mistakes and fuck up your legacy. You know what I mean? Like, there's some people that we liked, and then later on in life, they're like, okay, that dude is crazy, So, and I'm not trying to make light of the situation at all, but I think it is a great question. I've asked myself that question many, many times. What would I rather die, now and, affect so many people's lives, or would I rather, or would I rather just keep going and not really have that much impact? It's a great question, and it changes a little bit when you have kids too. It's a tough question, and I really don't know the answer to it.
Yeah.
But I do know that I respect people who live their lives every day trying to make a change, and regardless of whether that's all we can all hope to do, right? That's all we can all hope to do, and that's a good segue, I guess, into kind of some of our favorite new artists, and maybe we'll wrap up a little bit on that. We could, there's a lot more stuff that we can talk about. I'll also, real quick, shout out to people on Twitter at Pilot Boys Pod. Let us know what you guys think about
interesting year in music.
Yeah, interesting year in music, interesting year in sports. Let us know what some of your favorite 2019's stories were. And but let's get out of here on this. New artists, artists that you're looking forward to in 2020, because we're obviously big music heads. We've been in music forever as a team, and so music is forever changing. Hip hop is forever changing. There's new artists popping up all the time. Right now, it seems like there's a new artist.
People are getting famous for different reasons outside of music every day.
Right.
Too, right?
Yeah, and every day it seems like there's a new artist popping up.
How do you filter the social media rapper from the really talented rapper? And that's what an artist, that's what I really am trying to do now, is filter through the bullshit. Right. And say, should I just like him because everyone's talking about him? Right. Or do I really like him? And I think that's a good thing for true music listeners to always ask themselves. And I think there are a few artists this year that made noise. Obviously, Nipsey. When his album came out, I listened to it. I don't know if that was 2018 or 2019. I can't remember now.
It was 18.
His album, YBN Cordae.
Yeah, YBN Cordae is super. Yeah,
shout out to the Prince family there for helping make that whole situation happen.
So rap a lot.
And then the artist that's getting a lot of noise that I'm kind of on the fence about is Summer Walker, right?
Okay.
Obviously, I want to say she's obviously a great artist,
right?
But all her songs sound the same, and I still need an album. But the artist that I'm really, really looking forward to is Justin Martin.
Yeah.
She released her debut album.
She's out of Houston, right?
Out of Houston. She's 18, 19.
How would you classify it? Was it like R&B?
That's the thing that's dynamic about her at her age, is she's a songwriter.
Right.
Right. And she flows between writing great R&B songs that women really relate to, but men also gives men great perspective on some of the shit we do.
Right.
And then as a hip hop artist, she's raw. She's not just talking about Hot Girl Summer. Like, she's a real rapper.
Real quick on that too, because she's independent still, but she's getting interest from labels. And as the game has changed a little bit. Before when I was coming up earlier, the goal was to get signed. But as we started getting more into the game, it was like, I don't know if that's the goal anymore. The goal, maybe we can use them in some type of distribution, relationship or some type of JV. But now, the game is all over the place. Some people are signed, some people are independent. How would you advise or what things are you looking at when you determine whether or not you would push somebody towards a label or not.
Working with artists as long as I have, including you, I realize the thing that you guys value most is your creative freedom and independence.
Yes.
To be able to do what the fuck you want to do.
Right.
And I think that a lot of these artists that become big, they lose that.
Yeah.
And so that's where you see these fallouts. It's like whether you're reaching, if you're a true artist, right, you shouldn't care whether you're reaching 1,000 people or 100,000 people, as long as the people who are rocking with you relate to who you are and what you represent.
And that you can eat, right?
And you can eat.
Right.
And you can make you can make $1 million off of 1,000 loyal fans.
Yeah.
You know, you can.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time you do have to balance it, and it's important as an independent artist that if that's what the route you are going to do and this is what you want to do as a living, you understand the business side of it too.
Well, for me, I guess, my artist is the baby. Right, that's the artist that I look forward to the most in 2020. I feel like, and maybe that's obvious for a lot of people.
Why? What specifically? Like, obviously, everybody loves the baby.
Yeah, some people don't. Some people tell me all the sound the same. And
as a rapper, and how you evaluate yourself and other rappers.
Yes.
What makes him so much better than everyone else right now? Because people are saying he is better than everyone else.
I think the number one thing that the baby has is presence, a presence that we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah.
It is like an unwavering sense of confidence. Jeezy kind of has this a little bit. It's an unwavering sense of confidence that like, I am the fucking man, period.
Yeah.
And there's like nothing you can tell me because I've been through it all. And there's nothing that you can do to me that's going to move me off of this position. I'm unwavered in my position, and he has a presence. But he also has a lot of other intangibles, right? First of all, he's actually talented. He can rap.
Yeah.
But he also has a voice, a great voice that is memorable, right? And it's him. He's not auto-tuning his voice. He's not enhancing his voice really with, maybe a little bit here and there. But for the most part, that's his voice. And then he's also unique, right, in terms of how he approaches the game. His videos.
He's a business
his
genius.
Dancing.
He's
right.
Very smart.
Very smart. And he was also, he was a hustler before he got into the game. And I think he understood, he brought some of that hustle to the hip hop game. And I think the other thing that he has is kind of that dying desire to be great. And he's relentless. There were like Pac was relentless. Lil Wayne was relentless. These are guys that, Wale is like that.
Yeah.
And I remember Jay-Z saying that. One of the things that he really respected about Wale is that he knew Wale was never going to give up.
Yeah.
And when I look at the baby, I don't look at this as just a guy who's just trying to get, fame and, trick off a little bit.
He's doing it independently too.
Doing it independently. He's having fun doing it. He's doing it his own way. And he's just creating a name for himself, and he's going nonstop. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he's doing. Somebody on Twitter told me the other day that they think he's overrated, and they think all his songs sound the same.
Some people. Yeah,
he's not necessarily, embraced by everybody, but who is? I mean, no artist is embraced by everybody, but he's somebody that I'm looking forward to. And as an artist, he's somebody that I actually respect in their career that I respect. So, we'll see. Hit us up again at Pilot Boys Pod on Twitter. Let us know, who are your favorite artists of 2019? Who are you looking forward to in 2020? It doesn't have to be somebody that everybody knows. It could be an unsigned artist or whatever. We like hearing about new music and dope music. Again, thank you guys for joining us on the Pilot Boys podcast. This is our last show of 2019. V, shout out to you, man. You've really done your thing. I appreciate you being a co-host.
I'm glad we were finally able to make this thing happen, man. I'm having fun, and it's just going to keep getting better. Yeah,
and make sure you guys keep supporting us, man. We will keep putting out content. Your guys' energy kind of fuels us to keep going, to be honest. Sometimes, you do things like this and you don't know how it's going to be received. And but fortunate for us, this has been received very well.
If we do something terrible, tell us, please.
Yeah, if we suck, just tell us too. We'll take it. We'll swallow our medicine. But anyway, we are going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we will do a college football playoff preview with our college football insider Zach Smith. Obviously, this Saturday we have both games, both semifinal games. They're huge matchups. We're Ohio State fans. You guys know that by now. So we were excited.
Who are you betting on, Mac? Who are you betting on?
When we get back from break, they'll find out. We'll be right back. Love the Pilot Boys podcast? Support us on Patreon. Supporters can pledge as little as $1, and we have some cool perks on there. Check out www.patreon.com patreon.com/Pilot Boys Podcast. Show us some love today. Welcome back to the Pilot Boys Podcast. We are here with Zach Smith, our resident college football insider. We are going to do a CFP preview. This Saturday, we have the Church's Chicken. Wait. Chick-fil-A. Wait, who? Someone's presenting the Peach Bowl.
Somebody making a lot of money.
Some kind of chicken peach bowl.
Some kind of chicken peach bowl. This Saturday, 4:30 Eastern, I believe. It's between Oklahoma and LSU. And then right after that, we will get to the Nintendo Atari Fiesta Bowl. Oh, wait, PlayStation, sorry. Fiesta Bowl with Ohio State and Clemson. We're going to do a little bit of a preview on both of those games. Obviously, they're the CFP semifinals. The winners of those two games go on to play in the national championship game. So let's welcome to the show, Zach Smith.
It's good to be here.
What's up, Zach? Happy holidays.
Yeah, same to you.
So, Zach, let's jump right into it, man. This is obviously an exciting time for college football fans, and particularly if you're a fan of Oklahoma, LSU, Ohio State, or Clemson. Absolutely. It's even the most exciting time, right? You've been waiting for this for the last couple of weeks since the championship games, and we just want to get right to it. You know, there's kind of assumptions being made. I want to start in the first game, Oklahoma versus LSU. There are a lot of assumptions being made nationally, and they've been made pretty much all season that LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson were the top three teams in the country, and that anybody else who kind of got that fourth spot was at a severe disadvantage. And so, you know, nationally, you talk to, you know, sports writers or media, they're not really giving Oklahoma a chance to win this game. So my question to you is, first of all, do you agree with that? And how do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting game because both teams match up so well with each other as far as weaknesses and strengths. Oklahoma losing Ronnie Perkins is huge. I did a all CFP team in, I think, a couple episodes ago, and he was one of two guys on Oklahoma's defense that I had on the all CFP team. He was actually the other defensive end opposite of Chase Young.
He's our leading tackler, right?
He's a beast.
Yeah.
Well, he was a beast. I guess he's not going to be a beast in this game.
Right.
So
they lost him to suspension, right?
Yeah, some kind of suspension. You know how it is. Team violation of team policies or rules.
Right. Right. Whatever that
means. He
means.
probably smoked weed. What a criminal. What a bad guy.
Right.
But I'm excited to watch it because Oklahoma's defense is so much improved from last year. They got Alex Grinch, who was at Ohio State last year, as their new DC, and they've almost cut their missed tackles in half. They're doing things so much better than they were.
Yeah.
But it was like being called the world's tallest midget. That's like, okay, what does that mean? They were that bad last year.
Yeah.
Right.
So they've gotten a lot better.
They've gotten a lot better, but okay, how much better?
Yeah.
We're talking about the top echelon of football now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting because they're going against the best offense statistically and everything else in the world.
Yeah.
Right now.
Heisman QB.
Well, it's interesting too because in these type of games, you know, I'm always weary of the games, especially in college football, where the talent, you know, Oklahoma is not some rinky-dink program, right? And they're not a program that doesn't have a lot of talent. Yes, they have suspensions now. I think they lost a number of guys to the NFL, but they're still one of the top flight programs. And so I'm always weary when I hear like, oh, they have no chance of winning this game. I'm like,
come on, man.
Come on,
man.
Let's talk about this for a second. They had the last two Heisman Trophy winners, right? Right
Oklahoma.
Before this year, and then
Kyler and Baker.
Kyler and Baker, and this year they have a Heisman finalist. So they're doing something really right. Whatever you say about their defense, they're doing something really right on the offensive side of the ball. And Lincoln Riley has proven himself. And we saw in the Alabama LSU game that this game could be just a shootout. Obviously, LSU has great offensive talent, right? But Oklahoma has equally great offensive talent. And I think, you know, why would you overlook this game?
Well, that's the thing. So, and, you know, if you look, let's talk about Jalen Hurts for a second, too, because, you know, on one of our other shows, we were talking about Jalen Hurts and we were talking about Joe Burrow and the transfers, that whole kind of thing. And is there anything that you're seeing from him now in terms of the offense that Lincoln Riley has him running and that is different from what you saw him doing at Alabama?
Oh, yeah, it's night and day. It's more reminiscent of Lincoln Riley is one of the best schematic coaches on the offensive side of the ball in the country. I'd put him and Ryan Day right up there. And Joe Brady at LSU has done a great job with Joe Burrow in a much more NFL-oriented attack.
Right.
But what Oklahoma's doing with Jalen Hurts reminds me a lot of what Florida did with Tebow when I was there, where he's an efficient enough passer, probably not going to be a great NFL arm.
Right.
But what they do with him in the run game and play action and things like that and getting the ball to CeeDee Lamb in space, it fits him so well
that
he operates at an elite level.
Yeah.
And when he takes off, I mean, he's one of the most dynamic runners. He leads the team in rushing, I think, by threefold almost.
Yeah.
He's just that great of a player.
Right.
Like you could make the argument probably that he's the fourth best quarterback in the playoffs. And I could see that argument. But as far as like the best player playing quarterback, it might be him.
And he's shown a lot of heart this year, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they should have lost a couple of games, but for him taking the team on his back and making things happen.
And if you listen to him in interviews, it's like, that's the personality I want.
Yes.
I mean, they win a huge game, and it's like all the praise to him. He plays outstanding, and he won't smile, be happy. He's like, no, we just need to get back to work. You know, we have bigger goals than this. And you're like, man, you're not even going to say, like, I'm happy that we won? No.
Yeah.
No,
Great guy to have as your
straight
leader.
business.
So talk to us about a little bit about, you know, what it's like coaching a game when you're considered a big underdog, right? So here, they're obviously considered big underdogs.
14 points.
Yeah. What is that like, coaching that type of game?
I mean, it definitely gives you a chip on your shoulder. And the good thing is there's so many different motivational tactics, and that's an easy one.
Yeah.
I mean, we did it, I think.
When you were coaching at Florida, for example,
I mean,
and
Florida
you guys
in
beat
06.
Ohio State in 06, you guys were 13.5 or 14-point underdogs.
Yeah, and it was the same thing. I remember I went, so funny story about that. When I was coaching at Florida, and it was much later, the BCS back then was like January 4th or 8th or something like that. So I went home back to Columbus for Christmas, and I was doing some last-minute Christmas shopping, and I purchased from a kiosk at the Tuttle Mall a football that said 2006 National Champs Ohio State.
Wow.
I bought it and took that shit right to Gainesville. Wow. And I was like, this is what they're selling in Columbus. Just so you know.
Yeah.
It's what they're selling.
Wow. That's crazy.
How smart. Very, very
But
smart.
I mean, the media does so much, and I'll never forget. We had highlight videos with all the different Kirk Herbstreits and media personalities talking about Ohio State's landslide. Florida doesn't even belong in the game.
Yeah.
And you tell a team that's that talented that enough,
Right.
they're going to be really pissed.
Yeah.
Like really pissed.
And that's what I think. I mean, personally, I think Oklahoma has a very good chance of winning this game. And actually, I'm personally predicting an upset in this game. I know it's going to be an uphill battle, but one thing that we definitely saw from LSU throughout the season is that you can put up points against LSU, and you can put up yards against LSU as well. I think Ole Miss put up like 700 yards or something crazy like that.
70%, maybe 65%. Tua put up 50 points or something, whatever.
There's no doubt.
One other interesting, important note that should be mentioned is that LSU star running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a hamstring injury, and you know they're saying he's questionable to play in that game. How important do you think he is to their chances, and how likely is it? Do you think that he plays?
I mean, a hamstring injury, like even a bad one, is like 4 to 6 week injury. So he's had about 4 weeks. He should be able to be 100% or close to it.
Well, I think he got hurt in practice though.
No, he
did
got
he?
hurt last Tuesday.
Yeah.
Then it just depends on the severity of it.
Yeah.
But he's definitely became a huge piece. Second half of the year, he was, I mean, just opened everything up.
Yeah.
The run game became a good, because initially it was like Joe Burrow was just dicing people up. They couldn't really run the ball.
Right.
Didn't have a great defense. And then the run game came along and he kind of exploded onto the scene. He was great. That'll be a huge loss for their offense.
And, you know, Joe Burrow gets all the headlines, but he is the heart and soul of that team. He's a Baton Rouge kid. I think he's a senior. They're playing for him, too. So it could work both ways. If he's out, it could make the rest of the team play for him. And if he's there, obviously.
Yeah, there was an opinion piece, I think it was an SI that I read, where they were saying that they should not play him for this game and they should rest him for the title game. How do you we talked about this a little bit with Tua before in a different circumstance, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about this with Justin Fields later. But how do you even evaluate something like that? Is that something, you need to win this game to even get to the title game,
Yeah,
right?
that's a tough sell.
But do you want to play him but is it worth playing him at 75%?
Well, that's the evaluation, right? And they don't even have a known backup. I mean, there's a couple young kids that they've played kind of sparingly, so they don't have a guy, in my opinion, that is as good as him at 75%. So that's the evaluation. Yeah. I don't think in this scenario any of those 4 teams can say, well, if we make it, he'll be there for the next one. It's like, no. You got to shoot every bullet you have in this one to get to the next one.
Right.
And plus, that's probably bulletin board material if they decide to rest him. Right,
yeah, for sure. And you probably would never know if he did. It would be like, oh, he can't go, his hamstring, whatever. But I think the real interesting thing is going to be, it's really about how the defenses play. I think both offenses are going to be as good as advertised, as good as they've been all year.
Right.
I think LSU, believe it or not, has a slight edge on defense. Mm-hmm. They've
been playing better lately.
They have, and so they have the kid Christian Fulton, who's a corner who really no one threw at all year.
Yeah,
and they had the freshman on the other side,
Stingley, right?
Yeah, Derek Stingley Jr., who he leads anyone in the playoffs. He has 6 interceptions. He's balled out. He had 3 against Georgia.
He's a dog.
He's a dog.
Yeah.
Now he's young and he's not built for CeeDee Lamb.
Right.
He's just not.
nobody's built for CeeDee.
I mean, Devontae Smith from Alabama had over 200 yards receiving on him. So you're talking about a top 10 talent at receiver. He ain't built for that yet.
Right.
He's young, but he's really good.
Yeah.
So if they can find a way to make sure that Christian Fulton stays on CeeDee Lamb and they can let him cover their next best receiver, I think they got a decent shot of playing well defensively.
Yeah. I think my prediction, so I'm actually going to make a prediction right now. I think Oklahoma's going to win this game, and I think they're going to win it like 45-41. That's my prediction.
Shootout.
If you guys had a prediction to make, before we jump to the Fiesta Bowl, V, what would be your score prediction for this game?
I'm going with LSU. Part of it is that I am rooting for Joe Burrow. So.
I understand. Yeah.
But I do think that overall, when you look at it, LSU traditionally has been a defensive powerhouse. So I'm not ready to say that they suck at defense yet either. And
they've had some injuries and stuff too.
And the Big 12, even though Oklahoma has gotten better defensively, Big 12 defense is just a joke. I mean, it is. And it's going to be tough for them to see LSU who can run and pass.
So what's your score prediction?
35-28.
35-20. Oh, so you do think it will be a close game?
I think that I believe in Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb keeping this game close. I do.
And Zach, what about you?
I mean, I really think LSU is too much for Oklahoma to handle. On offense, I mean, the three receivers they have are ridiculous.
Yeah.
They have the Biletnikoff Award winner, the Heisman Trophy winner.
Right.
The running back situation makes me nervous.
Yeah.
I think they have a much better defense than Oklahoma. I think especially the second half of the year, where statistics can kind of fog your vision. I think the second half of the year they played better.
Right.
And people will always throw out their abysmal performances against some terrible teams. But I think I've watched them on film. I think they're a decent defense. Yeah. And in a big stage, that's when you're going to get their best effort.
Right.
And so I think LSU wins by 14 points. I really do.
And I think the reality is that they kind of should. But I think these type of games, like I said, they're so dangerous because when you tell kids that are that talented, that have chips on their shoulders already, Jalen Hurts has a big chip on his shoulder regardless of whether he's an underdog in this game or not. He's a dog.
He's the X factor.
And you tell them that they have no chance, that is a very dangerous recipe. Not to mention that LSU does have areas where they can exploit. And this is a one-game scenario. This isn't, a 7-game series. This is a one-game scenario. Anything can happen. So.
And the thing that gets lost that people don't talk about also is this is not a new day for Lincoln Riley.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, he's been here before. He knows what's going on.
And Jalen Hurts is an experienced quarterback as well.
And Oklahoma, people thought they wouldn't compete, but they've been competitive when they've gotten in there, right?
You're talking about a quarterback and head coach that have been there before.
Yeah.
You go to LSU, Ed Orgeron doesn't know what this is.
Right.
He's putting together a plan based on no experience.
Exactly.
And there's something to that.
That's kind of where I
pretty much in every area, right? Like CeeDee Lamb thinks he's the best receiver in the country. The kid from LSU got the Biletnikoff. Hurts thinks he's the best quarterback in the country. Burrow got the Heisman. So it's like there's a lot. There's a lot.
There's a lot. And so I'm looking forward to that game. But obviously, as an Ohio State fan, let's get to the big one, the Fiesta Bowl. Ohio State and Clemson. And what's so crazy about this game, and Zach, on this show, we've talked to you about this a number of times, is that when we were talking about the college football rankings, as they will come out every week, it was almost like a watch to where these teams were going to be ranked because we all believe that the toughest road to the national championship is if you have to play two of either LSU, Ohio State, or Clemson. And with Ohio State ended up being ranked number 2. Now they have to face Clemson. Clemson, to me, I think is probably the most slept on team this season. I think for a number of reasons. One, because they play in a weak conference. They didn't really have that many challenging games. A lot of the people who talk about Clemson negatively, they watched them play North Carolina.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, they almost lost North Carolina.
What was that, like week 4?
So they're like evaluating that. And then there's a little bit of hate there because Dabo's an annoying, whiny little bitch. And so people don't really want them to be good. And then also they just didn't have any competition throughout the season. So it's hard to really know how good they are. But, we also know that they have a championship coach, right? The college champion.
They're the best program. And I mean, I know Ohio State fans don't want to hear this until we prove it. They are the best program in college
National
football.
championships go through Clemson nowadays.
Yeah. They've beaten Alabama. They've dominated us. Who else is there to talk about? I don't know if have they beaten Georgia?
I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. They've dominated college football.
Well, they beat Alabama, the unbeatable team. They beat Alabama
And smashed
44-16.
Yeah. I mean, so so that's the thing. It's a game that I think it's a team that's been somehow still managed to fly under the radar. Obviously, Ohio State is a great team as well. So this isn't a game that I think, Clemson is just going to come dominate Ohio State. But I say that to say that there are a number of interesting storylines here, including the fact that Trevor Lawrence, their quarterback, who I think is amazing, by the way, as a talent,
Second year.
was the only quarterback who wasn't in the Heisman Trophy situation, right? So he didn't have a lot of the distractions that a lot of the other guys had. That's number one.
That's a great point. I didn't think about that.
The only one. But he might end up being, one of the best in the pros long term. Who knows? But there's so many different things here. So then you have Justin Fields, who's now saying he's 80 or 85%.
I don't know why he said that.
I don't know why he said it. People on Twitter are saying, it's gamesmanship. I'm like, what fucking gamesmanship is that? What advantage do you get from them knowing that you're not all the way healthy?
Sometimes our fan base, I love our fans. I can be crazy too, but sometimes they have to just accept that sometimes our guys might say something that's dumb.
Yeah, or he just maybe wasn't thinking, maybe wasn't prepared. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing. I don't, it doesn't. I can understand how it happened, but regardless of that, it is a storyline. If Justin Fields is not 100%, you're talking about Clemson's receivers, right? They have like 4 guys who are like 6'4", right, and speedy receivers. You're talking about an aggressive Venables defense. They're talking about blitzing. You're talking.
Don't forget about that running back either.
Yeah,
Travis Etienne is phenomenal.
So there's so many different kind of matchups and storylines here that I want to touch on, and I guess we'll just go one by one. Let's start with Justin Fields. Justin Fields, to me, Ohio State cannot win this game without Justin Fields, right? And that should be true probably for any starting quarterback. So maybe that statement's not even a big statement. But not only can they not win it without him, they cannot win it with him not really being himself. That's how good of a team this is that we're playing. How do you see the Justin Fields situation? What do you see there from a matchup standpoint that maybe where he could have success or where he could potentially be in trouble?
I mean, the one thing is, I don't think he's 80%. I think that's all horse shit. I think it's just him trying to be modest or trying to just kind of play like this modest role. I think he'll be 100% or 98% come kickoff. That's just my opinion. So not that means.
So you do think that? So you do think there's some gamesmanship then in what he's saying? I
don't even know if it was gamesmanship. I think they just asked him, and he was kind of like, I don't know. I'm still wearing this brace, so I'm not 100%. Even if his knee feels great, maybe some precautionary things are making him feel like he's not 100%. But
okay,
the thing they're getting from Justin Fields all year is he's going to be honest when you ask him a question, and I think he answered as honestly as he could. Right? He did the same thing with the classes, and people made that a big deal. It's like sometimes. He's a kid. He's a freshman playing quarterback.
So what is it we need to see from him, Zach, for them to be for Ohio State to be successful in this game?
Well, the reality is you watch how the season progressed. I mean, let's say he is 80%. That's still pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what you saw the first 10 games was a Justin Fields with chains on. Right. I mean, he was not running the ball. He was not doing those things. So you would say an 80% Justin Fields was one of the best offenses in the country through 10 weeks.
Right.
Now, as they got down the home stretch, they started kind of taking the chains off and saying, all right, we might need to run you a little bit now.
Right.
And so they did that. And that obviously made him more dynamic, improved the offense even more.
Yeah.
So if he is healthy enough to run the ball and be as dynamic as he is, it's a huge advantage.
Right.
If he's not, I still think they can move the ball effectively.
Yeah.
This is one of those games that it's going to be a team win or a team loss.
Yeah.
If he is really at 80%, though, does the offense, do you think they're going to rein back the running a little bit here and just go with Dobbins?
It's going to be,
passing
I mean, let's put it this way. There is nothing being restricted right now.
Yeah.
They might go into the game and say, let's just see how the game plays out.
Yeah.
But if that game's close or they're down, he's running.
Yeah.
I mean, or what? You're going to go home either way.
So where does Ohio State potentially have an advantage offensively then against Clemson? Because Clemson is actually one of the top 5 defenses in the country. There might even be one of the top 3 defenses in the country. Again, something that doesn't get mentioned a lot. And when you're playing in the ACC, nobody's going to give a lot of credence to that. But they do have a lot of talent on that defense.
And you look at the players they put in the NFL every year.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that everyone will point to their schedule, which is very valid. Mm-hmm. They have played no one. But you're talking about the number 1 statistical defense in total defense, passing defense, a top 10 rushing defense. And I know they haven't played anyone. Right. I'm not sitting here crowning them the best defense in the country.
Yeah.
But they've been really good. Mm-hmm. No matter who they played, they've been really good.
Yeah.
Now, I think Ohio State's gonna be able to run the ball.
Okay.
I think that's the strength of the offensive line. I think that the Ohio State's offensive line almost won the Joe Moore Moore Award, which is for the best O-line in the country, solely because they can run block so well.
Yeah.
Because there's some liabilities in pass pro at Ohio State. So I think running the ball effectively, and J.K. needs to have a great game.
Yeah.
And that's one advantage for sure. I think Justin Fields, if healthy, is another advantage.
Yeah. He's got to get rid of the ball though, right?
He's got to get rid of the ball.
Yeah.
And I think the pass pro is I've said it in every big game, and in this one even more so.
Yeah.
If the two tackles, if Brandon Bowen and Thayer Mumford don't pass pro well in this game, and if J.K. Dobbins allows 6 QB pressures in this game, it's not going to go Ohio State's way.
Yeah.
And whether they need to get Master Teague in for pass pro, whether they need to do some more 7-man pro and chips and things like that to help the tackles, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But they have to be better in pass pro, and then Justin Fields needs to help them out.
So let's talk about that for a second. So let's say you're in the game, right? Because I think a lot of these things come down to adjustment. You have a game plan and then you go in and things don't work out the way you anticipated. So now you have to adjust. So let's say that happens. We go into the game, the tackles are getting beat left and right. What are some of the type of things, that you can do to adjust for that type of thing happening in game?
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be a number of things. One is you're gonna have to use the backs out of the backfield and tight ends, motion them in, chip defensive ends. It really depends on what Clemson's doing.
Right.
And Brent Venables is known for being kind of a wild west coordinator. It'll be chaotic shit, blitzes, coverage, bizarre fronts, maybe guys walking around. It's all like you've not to equate it to this because it's very different. I know that, so don't shoot me for this, but you feel like it's like war, where it's just like I don't know where everyone is or where they're coming from, but this
He's
is
a
wild.
beast. He's a beast.
And they're not. Ohio State has always been, and the offensive line specifically, they're most comfortable when they know this guy's here, and I'm, my ID is this guy.
Yeah.
But when they're all walking around, it's like I don't know.
Right.
And how about our receivers here, right? If they are creating pressure, we're able to take the top off the defense pretty well. Are you confident in our receivers in the intermediate, quick routes?
Yeah, of course I am. I mean, I recruited 90% of them, and I love them. Like I said, so it's going to be hard for me to say they're not. But I think that, you're talking about there's 2 legit defensive backs at Clemson that can really play. They got the kid Tanner Muse is a safety that's really good, and then AJ Terrell's first team All ACC corner. So they have talent in the secondary,
right?
And they haven't faced a beast like a Chris Olave or a Ben Victor, Austin Mack, KJ Hill. They haven't seen that type of player yet.
Yeah,
but it's going to really be about Fields getting the ball out on time when a guy's open, because there's been a couple times where, like you saw, I think in maybe the Michigan game or the Wisconsin game, one of the two, Chris Olave goes up and makes a ridiculous catch the ball was late. That's why, and that's probably not going to happen in this game.
Yeah,
that ball needs to be out on time, on point, and then you give the receivers a chance,
right? Because
separation at the receiver position is momentary,
especially in this type of game.
Oh, against NFL talent, it's all on the quarterback,
right?
And people got crucified. I got crucified, and my group got crucified with JT Barrett because he didn't get it out on time a lot, and that separation would happen and close, and then they look covered, and it's like he can't get open. It's like, no, he was open.
Yeah,
he needs to get the ball when he's open.
Yeah,
get the ball to KJ Hill.
KJ's the one that he is Mr. Reliable.
Yeah,
and he runs great routes. He's an intermediate guy. He's become a deep threat guy despite not being a blazer.
Right.
He's a real key to the game, and I'm really excited to see Austin back. I know you love Austin. And he's had a kind of an injury prone kind of. Just an average year, kind of dinged up here and there, but I know what he's capable of.
He started to show, though.
Yeah.
And what about the tight ends? Like, I feel like that could be something that Ohio State has, like Jeremy Ruckert, he's a stud. We have Rashad Berry, actually, he's more of a blocking tight end, but he has talent. Yeah. They have talent at that position. Probably underutilized a little bit, but maybe I feel like that might be something that we see a little more this game.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that I know Kevin Wilson will want to do. I know Ryan Day will want to do is they'll want to go 12 personnel. They'll want to put Luke Farrell in and Jeremy Ruckert. That creates a mess in the run game, especially for a defense that is not used to this tough-ass run game.
Right.
Yeah. And it also can open up things in the pass game because they have to load the box.
Yeah.
So I'd see him playing a lot of 2 tights. My issue is the tight ends in pass pro have been just atrocious.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to throw the ball, you better be movement passes and some things like that because they have not been good.
So I guess to kind of put this in more perspective is that it seems like you're saying from an offensive standpoint where Ohio State has their greatest advantage is probably in the run game.
Definitely in the run game, and then I think the secret advantage is this pass game has not been able to or has had to be a dynamic pass game. They've taken their shots. There's been little explosions, little fireworks, But I think it's a combination of maybe the execution and timing, and then also the pass pro that's really held them back.
Yeah.
And if they can find a way to shore those two things up, I mean, they had a month to do it now.
Yeah.
If they can shore those two things up, you might see a different pass game out of the Buckeyes come Saturday.
What about us defensively, right? We talk about the secondary. We've had some issues with the linebackers tackling. How does our secondary match up with their receivers? And will this single high safety setup work against a team with 3 dynamic receivers or multiple dynamic receivers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they have much of an option. They definitely have the talent for it. I think that Jeff Okudah is going to have his biggest test of his career in T. Higgins. T. Higgins, in my opinion, I mean, he's the top graded receiver in the country.
Yeah.
I know he wasn't the Blitnikoff.
Is he like 6'4"?
He's huge.
Yeah.
I mean,
They always have a guy.
Yeah, they have I think 3 or 4 of their guys are 6'3" and above.
I guess I'm kind of just like scarred from Sammy Watkins, and they're just like, I'm like, oh no, they got more of them. It's like a factory. They just like, all right, here's 2 more.
Right.
Mike Williams too against.
I mean, just unbelievable. So but the 2 they have are freaks. Both of them 6'4", long arms, can jump, deep ball, high point receivers.
Yeah.
And Justin Ross, a kid from Alabama, believe it or not, Justin Ross and T. Higgins. Those 2 are going to provide matchup issues. Okudah's going to have his hands full with one of them.
Right.
And then the whole key to this game, in my opinion, is Chase Young getting pressure.
Yes.
Because I feel a little cockiness from Clemson at their tackle position.
Yeah, they got Jackson Carman.
Oh,
dude,
yeah, the Ohio boy that went to Clemson.
Yeah.
But he's really good. I'm not saying he's
but they're talking about they're going to single.
First year starter against Chase Young.
Yeah, and they're going to single Chase.
I mean, I wouldn't take Joe Thomas or Orlando Pace one-on-one with Chase. That's just stupid.
So it seems like the corners are going to be left in probably man a lot, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, man or off man. They play this thirds coverage that is kind of man, kind of off man. So they're going to help the corners, and I think it's all going to be about, can Damon Arnett keep his cool and play as well as he has at times?
Right.
Because he's a hothead. I mean, anyone that watches TV can see it. He gives up a catch, he's going to start talking shit, and he's going to get in someone's face, and then he's going to start cheating his alignment, he's going to start cheating his rules, he's going to start holding. That's what can't happen, that downward spiral of Damon Arnett. If he plays well, I think Ohio State wins the game. If he doesn't, I'm nervous.
So what about, the rest of the D-line? Because I think when we talk about the D-line, we kind of give them just a high grade. And a lot of it, though, is based on Chase Young. And V and I were talking about this earlier. I think it was the Wisconsin game. They were doubling, tripling him. But it didn't seem as though the other guys were getting sacks or getting pressure. Is Ohio State's D-line overall as advertised, or is this really just Chase Young and a bunch of good players, but not necessarily next-level talent?
I think so they have the best DN in the country, the best player in the country, obviously, in Chase Young. Yeah. They have the other defensive end position has been solid, you'd say. Yeah. Between Tyreek Smith and then Zach Harrison, and some young guys have rolled in there. They've been solid. What they do have, if considering they're going to be healthy, you're going to have Ja'Shawn Cornell, who's one of probably the best top 3 interior D linemen in the country. He is a defensive end in a D tackle's body. Yeah. He's a monster. Davon Hamilton, an absolute monster at nose guard. And then BB Landers is, his sawed off self is something to be reckoned with in the run game.
He is.
And he's not a great pass rusher, but it's hard for 2 guys to move his short ass.
Right.
It really is.
Right.
He just has instant leverage, and he's strong as hell.
Yeah.
So I think the D-line is as advertised. I don't think they have a primo D end on the opposite side of Chase. It's just going to be interesting to see what they do with pressures. I mean, they got to if that much attention is paid on one human being, it could isolate, it could eliminate him from the game somewhat. Yeah. But it opens up so much that they could do defensively.
To me, and I think you said this earlier, to me, that is the game right there. That's the game. Because if Ohio State can get pressure with some of the other guys, well, first of all, if they want to single Chase, I pray that they do that.
Oh, God bless you.
But let's say, obviously, they're not going to end up doing that. And even if they start off that way, the game is not going to end that way. If they can get pressure there, it seems as if that is one of Ohio State's biggest advantages is their D-line versus Clemson's offensive line.
And one of the things you talked about earlier, Zach, was like, when they are double and tripling Chase, you're not seeing the blitzes. You're not seeing the pressure created outside of the D-line, right?
Right.
And it seems like if that happens, that if they are going to double Chase, bring some of these linebackers, some of these corners on blitzes, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what they have. That's what they will do. I mean, there's no way they don't. They bring pressure opposite Chase Young. If you're going to pay all that attention to one side, the other side's a vulnerable side. Right. And they have some freak blitzers. Baron Browning, Sean Wade. Yeah. Those are dynamic blitzers.
Yeah, Sean Wade is
he's a dog.
Yeah, he is.
Like, good luck. You're a tackle trying to block that quick kid. Like, come on. So that's going to be the whole. And what you have seen, even people will say Ohio State has struggled. They struggled for a half one time,
Right.
But what you've seen, anytime there was any struggle, the halftime adjustments that Ryan Day and Jeff Hafley and the stuff they've done at halftime has been masterful.
Yes, it has.
I think they're the best coaching staff at halftime adjustments in the country, and that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
You watch the first half, no matter how it plays out, it's like, all right, that's fine.
Right.
They just gathered information for a half.
Yeah.
Now let the best coaching staff at adjustments go at it.
Well, I think that's one of the things nationally that people don't really know, right? Because this is Ryan Day's first year, and Hafley is not necessarily, he's about to leave, and people don't necessarily know. We know Venables, we know Dabo. So when you're looking at, you're going down the list and you're saying who has the advantage here, who has the advantage here, who has the advantage there. When you look at coaching, people are going to give it to Dabo. But inside, the people who know Ryan Day and who are watching, who've been really paying attention, know that there's really something to that, and that coaching advantage may not really be there. And so one of the things, though, I guess while we're talking about that, I don't like Dabo. He annoys me, right?
Yeah.
He's a little pipsqueak. But I do respect him. Obviously, you have to respect what he's done, and I respect what he's doing to try to motivate his team. What is it that you've seen, I guess, over the years with Dabo that he turned Clemson around? I mean, Clemson is now, like we said earlier, all roads go through Clemson.
They're not a blue blood college football program.
So what is it that you see with him that makes him so successful?
They've done an unbelievable job recruiting.
Yeah.
Especially offensive skill.
Where are they getting their talent from? Is it
Georgia and Tampa.
Okay.
North Carolina and South Carolina have some talent too, right?
Yeah, I mean they really go everywhere. I mean, you look at their receiving core. Amari Rodgers and T. Higgins are from Tennessee.
Yeah.
Justin Ross is from Alabama.
Right.
Trevor Lawrence is from Georgia. So they're all over the place.
Right.
What they've done traditionally is they've hit Georgia hard, Atlanta, the Atlanta area hard,
Yeah.
and then Tampa, the guy that's going to be the head coach at South Florida, Jeff Scott, he basically had his pick of the litter on a receiver from Tampa every year. Deion Kane, Sammy Watkins is a little south of there in Fort Myers, but they've just done a great job in recruiting, and so that's the one thing they've done. They've loaded offensive skill.
Yeah.
And then Brent Venables is the MVP.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the one consistent pillar in that program defensively every year.
Right.
They churn guys out, and he always has a way of doing creative shit to still be effective.
Right.
And they're really able to sell that he's going to be there to these recruits.
He keeps not getting involved in head coaching jobs.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm with
That's
him.
like the greatest thing ever.
And he's getting paid so much money. Like, go to the big stage. I'm
Right.
I'm with him.
He's cool
Somebody
where he
who
is.
knows their identity is always going to be successful.
Always.
Yeah. And let's talk about Trevor Lawrence too. Like I said, he's been probably the most overlooked kind of superstar in all of college football this whole entire season. He's a superstar. Let's not get it twisted. Yeah. He's not just a guy that plays for their team that's doing well.
Came in as a freshman and balled.
Yeah, and took somebody's job who was an incumbent starter who was also a baller.
And hung 44 on Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. So what is it? What makes him good? Where, if anything, can Ohio State rattle him or shake him up?
Yeah, I mean, so Clemson made a calculated, successful decision that has created all this underrated bullshit. Is they said, all right, we have probably the best quarterback we've ever had. I mean, and that's saying a lot with Deshaun Watson.
Right.
So he was ridiculous as a freshman. If we're going to accelerate his growth and take him to that next level, we're going to have to throw some shit at him that he may struggle and learn from to be a better product.
I love that.
And they're not stupid.
Yeah.
They knew the schedule sucked.
Right.
They almost screwed it up against North Carolina, but they didn't care.
Yeah.
They basically just opened the world of football to him and said, go.
Yeah.
And he struggled the first half of the year.
Right.
But it paid off.
Yeah.
You start seeing him making decisions, making throws, his timing, everything he does now is so much better than last year. And that's scary.
Yeah.
But people want to look at the season and be like, oh, he had a bad year. No, he struggled early so that he could win this game.
Right.
That was the whole point.
Yeah.
That's what development is.
That's what it is. And they didn't care. They didn't care if he won the Heisman. They have him for another year.
Yeah.
They were trying to get him to play at a greater level than he did as a freshman. And right now he is.
Right. So before we get out of here and get to our score predictions, I want to everyone kind of give their keys to the game, right? So for me, top 3 keys to the game, and we've talked about them kind of already, but let's kind of put it more cohesively. I think for me, one of them is pressure. Chase Young, defensive line, are they able to get pressure on Trevor Lawrence? If he's able to sit back there and have time, he's going to pick Ohio State apart. That's number 1. Number 2 for me is Justin Fields and his health. And, how mobile is he? Is he able to do everything that we need him to do? Because he's going to have to do a lot of different things. He's going to have to do, he's going to have to run sometimes. He's going to have to take some hits sometimes. I mean, this is it. This is for the marble. So it's not, like you said earlier, you're not going to hold him back. And then the third thing, which is always true, but it's particularly true when you start to look back at some of the bigger games that we played, is taking care of the football. Can't afford to turn up those fumbles.
Justin Fields cannot fumble the ball.
He cannot. This is a different type of animal here. You can beat Michigan and beat some of these other teams when you turn over the football a couple times, but not in this game. How do you see, V, you go, and then Zach, you give us your keys.
I mean, I think linebacker play here, the last couple games we've seen, if they tackle like they did at the start of the season, this arm tackling bullshit isn't going to work against Etienne. He's going to run through us. Mm-hmm. If that happens, that's a major key. Yeah. And also the linebackers, you mentioned the D-line, but the linebackers being allowed to get pressure and assist the D-line when necessary. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is the players trusting our coaches and trusting the game plan, and no one trying to be Superman. We do have great game planners on both sides of the ball.
Good point.
None of our guys need to be Superman.
Right. And Zach, what about you? What do you think?
Well,
this is really the keys to Ohio State winning.
Yeah, really right.
This is, not keys to the game. Keys to the Buckeye victory.
Right. Yeah. So you want to know how Clemson should win, right? Right. The two that go without saying, I think, for every game, and specifically when you're playing the best opponent you have played all year, and you both hit them, they can't turn the ball over, and they have to tackle well. Yeah. Team tackle, swarm tackle, effort, no arm tackles. They have to get guys on the ground, and that's saying a lot because they have faced no one that can avoid tackles as well as Clemson and Travis Etienne, and so they got to go
right,
and they've done it all month. So I'm not worried about that as much, but that is like the instant shot to the head.
Yeah.
You fumble the ball twice, you missed 10, 11 tackles, it's over.
Yeah.
It doesn't, no more keys matter.
Because I think in the Clemson, last time Ohio State played Clemson, I think Mike Weber fumbled twice in that game, maybe.
God. I really, honest to God, have blacked it out entirely.
Yeah, I understand.
There was drop. My guys had drops. Mike Weber coughed it up every time he touched it. Yeah. It was ugly. But so those are the inevitable ones. The ones that I think that if those go well, right, for both teams, all equal. Yeah. I think the most critical things are going to be how they get, you guys mentioned it, how they pressure Trevor Lawrence. Mm-hmm. He's really good under pressure, though.
Yeah, he is.
So it's going to be how do they pressure him and then hold up in coverage. That's one on defense. The other one is Damon Arnett. I think it's the whole key to the game. And I guess I haven't mentioned it yet, and how Jordan Fuller can help him.
Yes.
Because Jordan Fuller, post safety, doesn't get a lot of praise, doesn't get a lot of notoriety. He's really good.
Yeah.
And if they can find a way where he can help Arnett and Okudah can hold up against probably one of the best receivers in the country, the first round talent, then that's going to be key. Yeah. And then on offense, I think it's solely pass pro. And that all encompassing, getting rid of the ball on time, protecting Justin Fields. They're going to run the ball well.
Right.
If Justin Fields can run, that's an added bonus. Yeah. But if they don't, this is not a game where you're going to pound out Clemson and go win.
Yeah.
You're going to have to score some points and throw the ball.
Yeah.
And if they can protect Fields, he can do it. Yeah. And those receivers will do it.
Yeah, I think, there's some people, that are confident, very confident. Ohio State fans are very confident about this game, and I understand. But some people are saying, oh, we're steamroll Clemson. I'm like, I don't really see that. I mean, it could happen if they fumble the ball and we return 2 kicks for a touchdown, and, games can get away from you. But I think this game is going to come down to it. I think it's going to be a heavyweight battle. So let's get out of here on this. Score predictions. I'm juiced about the game. I'm sure you guys are juiced about it. I'm nervous about it. I'm excited. I feel every type of emotion. But now it's time to, let's put our money where our mouth is. How do we think this game is going to turn out? Zach, you can go first.
I think Ohio State wins. I'd probably be shot if I didn't say that, but I really do think that.
Right.
I think Ohio State wins 28-24. I don't think this is a game that there's going to be a ton of points scored, though both teams certainly have the firepower. But these are the two best defenses in the country.
Right.
To say it's going to be 56-49, come on.
Yeah.
I think 28-24 Ohio State wins, and I think it has to be a clean team win.
And who's the MVP of the game?
Ooh. That's a great question.
Yeah, I just thought about that right now.
I had to think while you were answering.
I think the MVP of the game for Ohio State has to be, it's got to be JK.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to run the ball well, and he has to have one of those games like he's had in all the big wins, 180 yards, 150 yards.
Yeah.
And that's their greatest advantage.
Right.
So as long as he can do that, I don't think that's the key to winning, but I think he's the MVP.
Got you. V, what about you? Score prediction and then MVP.
38-34. JK gets in with a 1-yard touchdown. Chase Young sacks Trevor Lawrence on 4th and 10. This is the fan coming up.
Okay.
So who you rooting for?
Yeah, all right.
And the MVP, we talked about him earlier, I think, is KJ Hill. I think if he can get those catches in the intermediate areas and be KJ Hill, I think we can win this game.
Okay. And I think one of the keys to the game also, I guess I didn't say this earlier, is running the football. And I think one thing that you have to be comfortable with as a coach is that 6 yards that you get. If you can get 6 yards, like, you please understand how valuable that is. Run the football.
First
run the
down.
football. And some, coaches sometimes they get impatient or they want to go for the jugular or, and I obviously understand play action, the run sets with the pass, of course, but take those yards. And I feel like if we see that early, Clemson could be in for a long one. I think the game is going to end up, I think it's going to be a little bit more high scoring than both of you guys think. I think it's going to be 42-34, Ohio State. I think Justin Fields is going to make one or two more plays, more than Trevor Lawrence. I think this is, his quote-unquote coming out party nationally. And I think he will end up being the MVP of the game. So we will see, and I'm sure you guys will hear from us this week and next week. Zach, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, again, your insight is always great. Make sure everybody check out his podcast, Menace to Sports. It's available everywhere. Follow him on social media at Coach Zach Smith. And also hit us up at Pilot Boys Pod on Twitter. Let us know what you think about our analysis. Let us know what you think about the keys of the game, who you think is going to win, and give us some score predictions. Score predictions.
We're coming for Tiger Blood.
Go Bucks. We'll be right back.
All night like I work a night shift, writing where I live in hopes that this shit just might change the way I live. Roof gone in the sky clear, I dream about it. And for them lame hoes that's talking that cap shit, I'm right here. Back to the money, I'm chasing it 24/7. I can't take a break from it. I'm gonna be dead before I take a...
That's all we have for today's show. Big thanks to our guest, Zach Smith. Again, thanks to everybody for listening to our final show of 2019. Don't forget, sharing is caring. Subscribe to the Pilot Boys Podcast on Apple, Spotify, Patreon, and YouTube. And please follow us on social media at Pilot Boys Pod on Twitter and at Pilot Boys Podcast on Instagram and Facebook.
And always remember, be you. You is fly.
Pilot Boys out!
Pilot Boys at. Pilot Boys